Welcome to the Dental Business Guide podcast. From money to marketing to management, this podcast will help you run a better dental business.
Hello everyone, welcome to the latest episode of the Dental Business Guide podcast. I'm Chris O'Shea and today I'm joined again by Dan and Nigel from the finance team. Hi guys, how you doing?
Hi Chris, how you doing?
Hi Chris, very well mate.
Good. Right, so let's get started. Today we're talking about starting up your dental practice or buying a dental practice. So guys, starting up, where should you begin if you want to start a dental practice?
Where should you begin? It's always a good question. We get asked that a lot by dentists who come to us at various stages of the process, sometimes not starting at the beginning. The first thing probably is that you've got to want to do it because it's going to be harder work than just buying a practice and taking over a patient book. So you've got to realise there's a little bit more work involved and you've got to build a new book of patients. But I suppose the real starting point for us as finance brokers is getting some basic information off the client to assess whether they've got enough funds to actually do the startup. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is that you need more funds for a startup than you do a purchase. Not a huge amount more, but you do need more. So the assessment process is a good one. And then really it's all about location. Because that's probably the hardest thing for a dentist to find is the location of his new practice, because it's got to be in a decent area. It's got to be, obviously, it's going to be a private practice. It's got to have good communication. It's got to be within a travelling distance of the dentist. And to be quite honest, one more basic ones, which I often say to people, he's got to want to work there, or she's got to want to work there. Yeah. Because they're going to be working there probably for the rest of their dental lives. So, if you pick somewhere you really don't like travelling to and you think is not a great area, it's not a good starting point, really. Yeah. So looking for the area is probably one of the hardest things. A lot of people do have it in mind. I mean, but unfortunately, we do get dentists who say that they want to start a practice in the south of England, which is quite a vast area, and we do get dentists who say they just want to. Well, I want to start one in Edmonton,
or the home counties.
Or the home county is another good one, yeah. So quite a big area. So the best thing is, I always say to dentists, and probably Dan does as well, look at a map and decide where you don't want to be. That's probably the easiest way. Yeah. Do it in reverse. Mm-hmm. So if you've got areas of London or areas of the country you really don't like, then why would you even be looking in those areas? And cross them out and then just look in the areas that are left. So that's really where they should start from. And obviously seeking advice, because there's quite a lot of the way that lenders want to lend to these, and I'll let Dan sort of go over that.
What, in terms of the loan to value on?
Yeah, loan to value and how they want it set up.
Yeah, so in terms of what lenders are looking for, because it's a brand new business, what they need is they're going to need a business plan. What they've got to be careful of is not writing a 60-page, 80-page document for a business plan, because obviously the lenders only have a certain amount of time, and you can put a number of graphs and stuff in there, but obviously it becomes quite a long document. So really what they need to do is be quite concise with what they're writing, establish what type of dentistry they're going to do, cover the location, cover competition. So try and get across most of the bullet points that they need, because obviously, there's a limited amount of time to review this information. Also, what they're going to need as well will be a business plan, a cash flow forecast as well, because it's a new business. The lenders, when they're looking at the application, won't understand what income it's sort of generating at that moment in time. So they'll need a cash flow forecast, and it needs to be realistic as well, because we see some cash flow forecasts, and Nigel will back me up on this, where people have looked at how much they think they're going to generate over 12 months, and they'll just divide that by 12, where is that really realistic when you're looking at a cash flow? Because that the first couple of months you're building up that patient base, so it may be a little bit slower, month 6, you're expecting, your return in patients from that first month, and obviously adding new patients. So you'll have certain spikes within that cash flow forecast, which will make it realistic. And the problem is, if you just divide things by 12, lenders will just discount that information as not being realistic. So you need to sort of put a bit of time and effort into that cash flow forecast, so those figures can be relied on. If you do need some sort of help on a cash flow forecast, Samera can put these together for you. So obviously we've got a lot of, we've got specialist dental accountants who can help with that, so banks can rely on that information.
Yeah, I think it's worth adding there, Dan, that we have a format that we use, and it's an 8-page cash flow forecast, which is accepted by the banks as being a realistic overview of the whole practice. Because when we talk about a cash flow forecast, the banks also want to see a breakdown of the hours, the amount you're going to earn per hour, what staff you're going to employ. They want to see the full costs breakdown. We're talking about the building of the practice, all the equipment. And if you can put all that into one cash flow document like we do, then that makes life so much easier for the lenders, because they're not scrabbling around looking at different bits of paper trying to piece together what we're talking about. And the spikes, as Dan referred to, are very important, because they're not only high income spikes, but they'll also be low income spikes. So if you're going to open your practice on the 2nd of January, it's not going to be that busy, because as most dentists will know, January is not generally a poor month, because all credit card bills become due and nobody wants to go out and spend any money. The same with July and August to a degree. So it's about timing and when you open your practice as well. It's quite important to make sure you hit the right spikes, and it's worth looking at the planning in the local planning office, because you don't want to open the practice the day they dig the road up outside your practice. And these things happen, as we all know. I mean, in the town where I live, the British Rail, what they call British Rail, whatever they're called now, Network Rail. They decided to replace one of the railway bridges. They're at month 9 now, and that road's been closed for 9 months, and there are 2 businesses on that road. So there's no cars can go up that road at all. So it's worth just making sure you've checked things out like that, and using people like ourselves. And we've done, I suppose, between me and Dan, hundreds of these now, because we used to do them as bankers, so we know what the bank's looking for, we know what the credit team are looking for, and now we do them as brokers. So we just supply all the information to make it really easy for the bank just to basically nod it through.
Yeah. I suppose your other point, just on planning as well, Nigel, is that the changes in the planning rules for dentists is probably a good point to bring up, because in the past, to be a dental practice, you had to have D1 usage. So you had to have D1, and it was quite hard to sort of get, really, because if there was already somewhere with D1 usage, it was very difficult. But that's now changed now. So E1 falls under, E1 now is D1, it's the same usage. So what that does is open up a number of different sort of sites to dental practices that they can use. So I think E1 is the old sort of retail space. So what that means is, instead of a dental practice sort of having to take a site that is maybe upstairs or not on the street view, E1 usage means they can be downstairs, and obviously it's easier access as well for them, because you don't want to be in a site where someone's bringing their buggy up to the first floor, which could make it difficult and maybe put people off coming to the practice. And also you can use the windows to advertise as well, because obviously you can put promotions in there, let them know you're actually there. So obviously what you're very good at, Chris, is the marketing side on dental practices, but they'll do that online. But then also, if they're using the walk-in trade, let people know there's a dental practice there, then that's sort of free advertising that they can do. So it's certainly worth looking at that. It's looking at the planning side of things, of making sure it all gets covered off.
Yeah, talking about getting new patients in at first, I wanted to ask about, you mentioned being realistic in your business plan and financial forecasts. How conservative should people be when they're doing their business plan and financial forecasts about the new patients they're going to attract and retain? Because I know when I have done this kind of thing. I don't really like to kind of predict how many patients you're going to get in with a new digital marketing campaign, let's say.
Yeah. A lot of it depends on what they're going to open and what they're going to bring to the practice. So if you're just opening a general dentistry practice and you're in let's say a town of 20,000 people and there's 3 other dentists all doing general dentistry, you're going to get some patients because the NHS is restricted and that people can't get appointments. Some will come to you. If you're coming into the process and you can do Invisalign, you can do implants, you can do sedation, you can do all these extra things. Then if you can bring those to a practice, not only will you get new patients, but you'll probably get some referrals from the other dentists who can't do them. We get this a lot with implant people who want to put in a CBCT machine because they need that. And then they find that the only CBCT machine is within 10 miles. And suddenly they're getting all these patients referred to them. They can charge that. So it's another form of income. So a lot of the income figures, we always say you'd be very harsh on your income figures and put them as low as you can. But you obviously put in your full costs.
Yeah.
Because if it works on that basis, it'll work when you're doing really well. But to get to that income figure, you need to have probably 2 or 3 chats with me and Dan to sort of understand what you're offering, how many days you're going to work there, and what sort of hours you're going to work. So if all the other dentists are closing at 4 o'clock and don't open on Friday, and that's not rocket science to say we'll open on a Friday, and the same with the Saturday work. They're amazing the number of private dentists that do not open at the weekend.
Yeah.
And if you're in somewhere, let's pick I'll use an old-fashioned term, a commuter town. So if you're in Orpington or Basingstoke, then you've got people going in and out of London to work. They're not going to want to go to the dentist at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
so if you open at 7 o'clock in the morning or you stay up until 8 o'clock one night, you'll pick people up, especially if you're near the station. Or if you open on a Saturday, and you only have to open for 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday. And you have to use what's basically common sense. So if you open for 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday and you're absolutely rammed, then you take a day off in the week and open on Saturday all day because you're going to be busy all day. And access is probably one of the most important things at the moment. People being able to get to a dentist, and it's not just for checkups and that sort of thing. But if you can do emergency dental work, because. Let's be honest, nobody really wants to go to the dentist. We go because it's a bit like having a car. If you maintain it, it works. Yeah. So we maintain our teeth because that way we don't get any trouble. But occasionally you get trouble. And at that point, I think we've all had toothache in our life. We know that we need to see a dentist and we really need to see him now. And if you can supply that service by being local to the practice and perhaps coming in, just come in and serve the patient, you'll get a good review on your website. You'll get a happy little customer who'll go out and tell all his mates how good you were and how you saved him his life at the weekend because he was dying. But that's good publicity.
Yeah, emergency dentistry is definitely one.
There's loads of things. Yeah, loads of things you can do. And so all these things. What we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 minutes, build into how you calculate your income.
Yeah.
So it's no good saying to me, I'm just going to do fillings and extractions, but I anticipate I'm going to do 10 grand a month in the first 2 months. Then the answer to that is probably not.
Yeah.
You're probably going to do 1,000 or 2,000. But if you add implants into that, and we all know that, I think we all know roughly the cost of an implant. You do a couple of implants in the first month, and you generate £5,000.
Yeah.
And alongside that, and this is sometimes what we have to say to dentists who are good at implants or good at Invisalign, sometimes you need to just step back a bit as well and do a bit of general dentistry. You can't bring in an associate to do the groundwork for you.
Yeah.
You need to do that work as well. You need to do the hygiene at the beginning.
Yeah, I was going to say that the hygiene cost, because again, if there's any, I suppose the main thing that when I'm talking to clients about the startup is where can you save money in terms of the startup. So if you can do as much dentistry yourself, perfect. You know, if you can do all the hygienist work, you haven't got to pay someone else to do that hygienic work. You haven't got to share that fee. And also what you're doing is building relationships with those new patients that are coming in. In terms of staffing, you know, the difficulty that you find sometimes is they come from an established practice where you've got a practice manager, a nurse, another nurse, a 3 receptionists, and they try and sort of replicate that at the new site, where that's not really realistic, because there'll be some days where you won't be busy. So you need to make sure that you've got a nurse stroke receptionist who can do sort of both roles if you can. So when they're not helping you in the practice, they're on the reception, sort of covering that role. So again, it's reducing costs. And while talking about costs, one of the other sort of big things really is your rent fees. You know, if you're leasing a place, ask for as long as possible. You know, if you ask for 3 months for a rent-free period, they'll probably give you a month or 2. If you ask for 12 months, then, you know, they're going to scale you back from 12 months. They're probably not going to give you 12 months, but at least then if you start at 12, they may go back to 8, or they may go back to 6. And the thing to get across to dentists when they are requesting that, because obviously the vendor is thinking, oh, I'm not going to get paid for X amount of months, but a dentist is going to spend a lot of money, and we're going to get onto how much a dental practice costs in a minute to set that up. But it costs a lot of money to set up a dental practice. You're not going to go in there and be there for a year or so and think, oh, I'm going to move down the road somewhere else and spend another load of money to do that. Dental practices don't tend to hop around a lot. They're going to be there for the length of their lease for 15 years, right? So if you help them out at the start, then that will help that business grow, and then they'll be there for a long period of time. And the funny thing about dentists, who do dentists sell to? Other dentists. So after that 15-year period, if they've had enough, I don't want to be a dentist anymore, who are they going to sell to? Another dentist. So that landlord, in effect, has got a tenant for the next sort of 30 years. And as we all know, dentists pay their you know, they pay their rent. You know, they earn good money, and, you know, it covers it. So pretty much the landlord cannot worry about his rental payments for the next sort of 15 to 30 years. So it's having those conversations with the landlords to help you at the start, because it'll help them in the long run.
Okay. I know for a fact we do have on our website actually a couple of guys on dealing with landlords and building business plans, that kind of thing. So definitely, if you want to learn more about this, go on our website, check them out. They're really useful. But let's move on to what I'm going to guess is the main body of the talk. So how much is it going to cost? What kind of loan to value you're going to get? What a bank's happy to fund? What you're going to have to fund yourself? What are the options for them?
Okay, this is always a difficult one, and always one that, you know, the dentist will always say to us, oh, how much is it going to cost me? And it's a bit like, I suppose it's a bit like booking a holiday. The holiday can cost you 2,000, it can cost you 5,000. And if you want to go first class, it will cost you 20,000. So, and it's the same with dental practice. So the build costs, I mean, there are things in the build costs that you have to do. You have to upgrade the electric in most of these premises because you use a huge amount of electricity. You have to build to CQC standards. Floors, walls, doors. If you're using X-ray machines, you've got to have the appropriate door in place. You've got to have the appropriate protection in place. You've got to buy the right furniture. So those sort of costs, they can be fairly standard. But obviously it's the finish. It's the finish. Now, I mean, we've done, I say, 100 of these, and I've done them for 170,000 in total, and I've also done them for 600,000 in total. The average, and a good average figure, I would say, is around 350, 370 all in.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, the beauty of that figure, and it is a good figure because it makes it easy for us to work out the loan to value. The banks will lend you 70% of the build and the equipment costs. Now, obviously, but that is limited to 250,000 maximum. So if you're spending around 350, you can get 250.
Right.
Now you can get that for a leasehold over 15 years, as long as the lease is 15 years.
Yeah,
that's the maximum they'll do. If you're going to buy the freehold, and a lot of people do buy freeholds when they do startups, and we'll talk about that in a second. You know, the freehold loan can be for for 20 years or even 25 years in some cases. Again, it'll only be for 70% because it's a startup. So you've got to find a 30% deposit for both.
Right.
But it may be that if as long as you're not buying one in Chelsea, you know, your purchase cost for your freehold might be equivalent to your rent, or near enough that in 15 years' time, when you renew that lease, because remember leases go up every 3 or 5 years on review, always upwards. So you could end up paying what you're paying for the freehold, and you're getting an asset. So it's a big advantage in doing that, and also the second advantage to buying a freehold is they'll do it over 20 years, and they'll also do your practice loan for your build and your goodwill over 20 years in most cases. So it extends, and this goes back to what Dan was saying about trying to keep your costs down. So by spreading it over 15 years is good, but over 20 years brings your loan payments down even more.
Yeah.
And most banks will do this. Will give you the first year interest only. So again, they are trying to help. They are trying to help, and they know that you're going to make a loss in the first few months. We get a lot of people when we do the projections go, "Oh, but you've made a loss in the first few months." Yeah, because that's the way life is. You're going to make a loss in the first few months because your income doesn't meet your expenditure.
Yeah.
Once it starts to meet your expenditure, your break-even point, that's great. But up to that point, you'll be putting money into that business as well. That's why you'll be working elsewhere as an associate. You might be leaning on a wife or a husband who are earning as well to pay the household bills. So you need that sort of additional help. And we've talked about dentist buying, but obviously more than one dentist can do this. And we often get married couples, brothers and sisters, university friends. They set up together. Now, obviously, that helps because, one, you share the burden. 2, you share the deposit. And the beauty of it is that you can open more. So if you're only going to open 1 or 2 days because you need to work elsewhere as a sole trader, if there's 2 of you, you can open 4 days, and both of you can still work elsewhere. That tends to grow the business quicker. So that goes back to the previous question about income. How do you gauge your income? We need to know how many people are going to be involved in it. Yeah. And you know these are all the things. It's a complicated mix. And you can understand why banks want so much information about each party, because they consider it to be higher risk than dentistry, but dentistry isn't considered to be risky. So when we say higher risk, we're not putting it up there with manufacturing the lunar space lab. You know, that's quite high risk. You know, because they don't need many of them in a year. But you know, it's higher risk in their eyes, but it's very low risk for dentists.
Yeah.
So you know, and the banks are quite willing to lend in this format.
Okay. So yeah, kind of answers my question kind of perfectly. So what about EBITDA? Tell me a bit about that.
So EBITDA is like earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization. So I just write that down quickly. So EBITDA is probably more relevant when you're looking at sort of a practice purchase. So when you're purchasing a practice, that would be, you will have an element of EBITDA when you're looking at the cash flow, because there'll be interest in there and some depreciation that you'll add back in. But a lot of the time on the EBITDA is basically, what does the practice look like when you're there? You know, when you're working there, what income is it generating? So it could be, so this is, I say, probably more relevant. Do you agree, Nigel, on the practice purchase on the EBITDA? But in effect, what it is that I own a practice and I work a certain amount of time, and I may employ, you know, maybe I only work there 2 days a week and I employ an associate for the 3 days, and, you know, I may be looking to retire and sort of, you know, wind my days back. So obviously there'll be more associate costs within there. Yeah. But what you would do then, so if you were buying it and you was working there full time, as part of the EBITDA calculation, although sort of the associate costs are, you know, not within that EBITDA, you know, little sort of, you know, EBITDA. I can't think of the words. Acronym. That's the word I was looking for. Acronym. But what you would do in that is go through, and then basically you would add back your associate costs in there because you're working there full time. You would add back in the interest that the person's been. So I've been paying on my loan. You add back in the depreciation that I've been paying on my loan, and then any sort of tax in there as well. And then what that would do is drive the bottom figure on there, and then from that figure, that's what the banks will use to work out if there's enough cash within the business to service any debt.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways of looking at it is net profit is calculated by accountants for you to pay tax on.
Yeah.
So they're going to make that figure as low as possible. So what we do as bankers, and banks do allow things to be added back on which aren't in the acronym. But we add them back on. But what you've got to watch is when a seller, when an agent is selling a practice, they will inflate the EBITDA, obviously, and they will inflate it with. I mean, I've seen people adding back accountancy fees, subscriptions. I don't know. It's just you look at it and you go, how can you add those back on? They're still going to have to be paid.
Yeah.
Whoever buys that business is going to have to pay those. Yeah. And so you've got to think about those. But as Dan said quite rightly, it's EBITDA is more concerned with buying a practice. The EBITDA figure does come up in the cash flow of in the profit and loss of a startup, and it's important that EBITDA is high enough to repay the loans. But at the end of the day, it's something we calculate for the bank. We don't often get an argument from a bank when we calculate it. No. We often argue when the sales agents calculate. I mean, they'll have back everything. I mean, it's just a way of inflating the profit.
Yeah. The thing is on that, Chris. So when you've got an EBITDA figure, if you make it very high, what you'll tend to find, and values may agree or disagree with it, they'll use that EBITDA figure and use that to calculate the valuation, and it'll be a percentage, or they'll times that EBITDA by a certain figure. So obviously if you're working from a higher figure and timesing it by a certain amount, that will drive the purchase price up. But say some valuers may agree or disagree that they use an EBITDA figure for that, but I'm not getting into that one. We're not valuers.
Is that a bit like some people's recollections might be different?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay, we can either confirm or deny if they actually use that. Some do, some won't. Some say they use a different figure that we would never understand. But
I mean, the big difference there is that if you're buying, then the lender is going to send out their own valuer anyway. Yeah. So he's going to value the practice, and he's not going to value it by adding back on everything you're going to pay. Yeah. So it's pointless agreeing a price, which is highly inflated. Where values are coming and go, well, no, it's not worth that, and then you've got to go back and argue. So it's best to get these things out in the open at the beginning.
Yeah, sales agents are a little bit like estate agents. An estate agent will come out and value your house, and say your house is worth X amount, but the bank will do the same thing when you're buying a house. They'll send through their valuer, and that valuer will say how much your house is worth. And it's pretty much the same in terms of practice purchases. The sales agent, their job is to sell the practice and make it look as good as they can, and everything's perfect on it. But the valuer will come out and actually say, this is what I think the EBITDA is, and this is what I think the value is. So it's sometimes those figures align perfectly, don't they, Nigel? It's not, and another time
sometimes
they can be different.
Way out. Well, they can be a work of fiction.
Fiction. So we talked a little bit about information you need to provide, and obviously with EBITDA, you need to get your figures right. Someone needs to approve them all. With both startup and buying practice, what kind of information, documentation are you going to need to get this loan?
For the individual, I mean, you got two people. So for the individual, and then for either the building or the practice that you're going to set up, or the practice that you're going to buy. So for the individual, and obviously Dan, keep track here and let me know if I miss one.
I'll tick them off as you go along.
Tick them off. You're going to need probably a CV. showing what you've done in the past, and hopefully showing some sort of management experience. Not just having done dental work, but perhaps having mentored staff, trained staff, that sort of thing.
Yeah, CQC stuff as well.
Yeah,
if they've done it. Yeah.
You're going to need to provide us and the banks with a lot of details about your personal assets and liabilities and your income/expenditure. And you're then also going to have to provide 3 to 6 months personal bank statements showing your income.
Yeah.
And the banks there are looking, one, to check that your income is, as you said, it is, and also how you manage your account, because they don't want to take on people who mismanage their accounts.
Yeah.
So that seems very fair. They'll probably want to see your last 3 years tax returns, or your tax calculations, or if you're just employed, your P60s.
Right.
Again, it's to check in the level of work. They don't want you to be buying a practice where you've got to be earning £200,000 a year if, in the last 4 years you earned £40,000. They want to see that the level is fairly commensurate with where you are. Yeah. So that's the sort of basic background information.
And that stuff's the same for like the startup and the purchase. So that information will be the same. So regardless of what they're looking to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Did we get everything on the list, Dan?
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good. A big tick there, Nigel. Big tick.
I got a pass mark, did I? Thanks.
Well done.
Right. So for a startup, as Dan said earlier, you're going to need a business plan and projections. And obviously there are certain other things, and some of these might sound very basic, but sometimes people don't supply them. We'd like the address of the property. That would be quite nice. What name are you going to trade in?
Yeah.
What added service? Yeah. What added services are you going to provide?
Yeah.
Sort of. The business plan obviously should elaborate on that, but make sure that information there. If you've got a floor plan from one of these dental builders, that's really useful as well, because you remember, you're giving it to a bank and they've got nothing to look at. It's not like buying a practice where they can go on and look at the website. They've got nothing to look at other than perhaps a Google image of the outside of the property. So all those sorts of things are very, very useful when you're doing a startup.
Yeah.
For a purchase, if there's an agent involved, let's have his brochure, because we all like a good giggle. Sort of read through the EBITDA calculation. Yeah. But we also want to see the accounts. And it's surprising how many sales agents only give you a very pre-seed set of accounts. We want to see the full accounts, and we want to see them for the last 3 years. And what we're looking to protect the purchaser. We're looking to see that the turnover is either constant or rising, not falling. If it is falling, why is it falling?
Yeah.
And if they're going to come to us and say, well, the dentist has been ill, or he's been thinking about retirement for the last 2 years, we can all understand why it's been falling. If it's an NHS practice, we want to see the last pay statement, so we can confirm the number of UDAs and the rate, and also see what they're doing against their target. Because you don't want to be buying one which is in month 11 and they're only at 10% of target. Because obviously you're going to get things like clawbacks. Yeah. So all those sort of things extra. And some people say to me, well, it's fairly obvious. And I think, well, yeah, it is, but people forget to send them. And we get a lot of people going, oh, do you really need that? And I know, well, yeah, we need it because we've asked for it. Because we know the banks are going to ask for it.
Yeah.
So you might as well send it in, because you can't really progress. And if the dentist has already be working as an associate, and he might be running his own limited company, we are going to have to see the accounts of that limited company as well, and the bank statements of that limited company. So again, just to match up, it's a matching up of all the information, so that when you've explained the story to the bank and their credit department, they can tick things off as everything's in order. And smoother it is, the quicker it will go through.
Yeah, and I think also, like, the thing to bear in mind, especially on a practice purchase, the purchase could be £1 million. It's unusual. Like, sometimes we find it very strange. I think me and Nigel was having a conversation about this the other day, that someone's buying something for just use £1 million for a figure, but a large amount. But their last set of accounts could be like 2022, when like 2021, sorry, weren't they? And then but they haven't got any figures for 2022. They haven't got any management information or anything like that. So you're not seeing an up-to-date picture of what the business is doing. Yeah. So you're sort of a couple of years out, but then they want you to explain to a bank that it's good for £1 million loan when you haven't got the up-to-date figures, because it's difficult to do, because how can you support an application to a lender when you haven't seen the up-to-date figures on the business? And how can you say that's going to pay a business loan without any problems when the financials are so out of date? So I think even when people are going into it, they need to for themselves, to make sure they've got up-to-date figures so that they can see, the money I'm spending on this business makes sense because it generates this amount of income.
And the value is going to need those accounts anyway.
They should do. They should do. Yeah.
And
the bank value, definitely. Yeah.
And the bank's going to ask for them. We like to provide them up front because there's no point in providing them later to find out it's a disaster.
Yeah.
Provide them up front, and if you don't provide them up front, I mean, okay, on occasions I might have provided a year out of date, but one of the conditions of sanction that the bank will put on it is the sight of those accounts, and those accounts being in line with the last. Yeah. So you might as well get them up front. And it is strange that we get this a lot, and we get it a lot from sales agents who are not bankers. They are sales agents.
Yeah.
And they will tell us, but they don't have to supply the accounts until December or January. I'm saying no. There's a statutory requirement that you have to supply them within 9 months. But if you want to sell the practice, well, you can really do them now. They're not over. I mean, let's be honest. They're not over complex. Most dentists. This isn't ICI. It's and most of them are quite small and quite simple to put together, and the accountants can do it, and they might have to pay a little bit for it, the seller.
Yeah.
But it's about getting your house in order. I mean, we used to sell practices many years ago, and one of the things we used to say to people was, well, we can't sell it if you don't give us up to date figures, because it's just a waste of time. Because everybody's going to come to us and say, well, where's the up to date figures?
Yeah, and I think also, just a little plug for Samera Accountancy, is that really your accountants, should now be on sort of more a digital setting, really. So, we use Xero through Samera Accountants, so you should be able to run a lot of this information with a click of the button, or your accountant should be able to provide this information quite quickly. We're moving to a new era now where information is needed, and it should all be there on your computer ready to go. And I suppose if you take over that business, what you want to do is put these procedures in place, because I suppose what you don't want is to wait sort of 12 months to realise you haven't made any money at your practice because you haven't got up-to-date management information. You've not kept control of your costs. So this is stuff that banks want to know, but you should want to know for your own sort of business acumen, that your business is performing in the right way, and that you're sort of covering your costs, really. It seems strange that I think because we're used to all the accountants using it and our clients using the systems, that when we ask it from someone else for that information, that they can't just sort of send it over quite quickly.
Yeah, it's a good point though about making tax digital. That should make all of this pretty swift, and there shouldn't really be any excuses anymore. But
I think the rule was coming in that they was due to do it, and it would be sort of official, wasn't it, that everyone had to do it every quarter? You sort of had to do some sort of tax return. I think they've pushed it back slightly now.
They pushed it back again.
Yeah, but I think that's the way things are going, and
if you're not doing it already, then it's coming exactly. In. You might as well get it.
Exactly. You might as well get used to it instead of because it's useful for you.
Yeah, exactly. That might be another podcast episode I'll have to do with the accounts team at some point.
Yeah, it'd be a good one.
Yeah, I'll get them involved. Right, so how long, both for startups and for purchases, roughly how long is it going to take? Without saying how long is a piece of string.
So on the purchase, it can be quite a hard one because there's a lot of elements that they'll need to sort of cover off, really. So Obviously, like Nigel mentioned, the bank will want a valuation undertaken, so that will take a while to do. The actual bank side of things and getting themselves up straight, ready to go, that's quite quick. But then if you're taking over a lease or a freehold, they need to do their legal paperwork to get that in place. But the real thing that takes a long time is CQC. Right. So it's getting that CQC transfer. So you're probably looking, like, if you're buying an established practice, you're probably looking sort of 9 months to actually make that happen. Mm-hmm. And I've been optimistic with 9 months there, Nigel.
Oh, you're being a bit pessimistic, I think. Yeah.
Do you reckon? But you're probably looking like 6 to 9 months.
Yeah,
really,
I would say 6 to 9 months.
Yeah,
depending on any issues that come up and how quickly the purchaser gets on with the CQC. Yeah. You know, we've had cases where they've got everything in order, everything's agreed, solicitors are ready, and they turn around and say, oh yeah, and I've just applied to the CQC. Yeah. And you go, well, that's going to be another 12, 16 weeks then.
Yeah.
You know, and it's only because the CQC are well understaffed.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of activity.
Yeah.
So, you know, they just cannot do it any quicker. So the best, I mean, for a startup, similar sort of timescales, I mean, normally about 6 months, you know, before you actually start work on your premises. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can be quicker, but it all depends how quick you can get your information together, how quickly you can get to the banks. At least with a startup, if you're not buying the freehold, there's no valuation.
Yeah.
So it can be quite quick.
Yeah. I suppose sometimes with the lease side of things, that can be quite delayed, obviously, if you're negotiating certain terms in leases and bits and pieces like that. But I think, like we've said on other sort of webinars, really, you need to employ a specialist solicitor. That's so important on startup and purchase. You want to make sure that your solicitor is covering off all the points, and obviously, you know, you're in a specialist sector and covering off all the points for a dentist. You know, because you may have someone who's a good solicitor, but doesn't understand the dental sector as much, and they may miss things. And especially on the purchase as well, if you're transferring NHS contracts and making sure that's done correctly, if you haven't got a specialist, they may miss things. And what you don't want to be in a position where the solicitors on the other side is probably prompting your solicitor on things to do, which puts you. Sorry, what's that?
Or better than your solicitor.
Oh, better than your solicitor.
Because if he's better and he knows the game, you could find out you haven't done everything.
Yeah, so they may be a little bit more expensive in terms of doing it, but obviously they understand what they're looking for, and they understand they're coming out and they're doing their job properly. So yeah, that's one of the things you should definitely use when you're going through either a startup or a purchase.
Yeah, but it goes back to the use of professional specialists.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And just as a quick another plug again, if you join the Samera Alliance and the buying group, we can hook you up with dental specialist solicitors and basically anyone you need to start up a practice.
Yeah.
If we don't do it, we know someone who does.
Yeah, you can get your equipment a bit cheaper and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Consumables,
exclusive deals. Yeah. We can get the asset finance. So yeah, if you are thinking about starting up, then we're essentially a one-stop shop for everything startup.
Yeah, 100%.
So you mentioned CQC. Why is that so important?
Because you can't trade without it.
There we go. Brilliant. Perfect answer.
They are the governing body. They are the governing body, and if you try and trade without it, you are trading illegally.
Right.
And every dentist knows this. And you know, CQC will do inspections of premises to make sure that they're covering all the right things.
Yeah.
So it's basically, I would say, a trade body, but it's the regulatory body.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got to have it.
Yeah, and I think, Nigel, when you said before about sort of, you know, getting some plans and stuff like that of the startup side of things, is what you don't want is, you know, you get your mate the builder to come in and he thinks he knows where a decontamination room should be put, but if CQC come in and go, why have you put that there? They won't sign you off. So again, when we're talking about specialists, it's even at the starting point, you get someone in, if they can design your practice and they understand how the flow of a dental practice should be, because things need to be in certain places, and to make sure you're CQC compliant. So you don't want to have that point where CQC coming to do the inspection before and they go, oh, that shouldn't be there, or that shouldn't be there. So CQC is very important in saying that they'll come out and do inspections, and you need to make sure you're on top of all your paperwork on that. And again, talking about the buying group, we do have people on there that can help with CQC compliance. So there's a lot of paperwork there, but they will assist in terms of doing that and taking a lot of that paperwork away from you.
And do I remember correctly, earlier on you said it should be about 12 to 16 weeks to get CQC approval? Right.
Yeah, so CQC approval, and also you need approval when you become from an associate to an owner.
Yeah.
So it's the same process.
Right. Fair enough. Right. So pitfalls, common mistakes, things people might not be aware of. I mean, I'm sure you've got a list as long as your legs, but any most important points you can think of that people need to be aware of?
I think if you do all the things that we've said, you get the right length of lease, you right staffing levels, you think it all through, you do your plans, you get good quality cash flow figures. If you do all those things, literally the pitfalls would be the reverse of every one of those.
Right.
Trying to do the cash flow yourself. Employing an associate and a practice manager and 5 nurses on day one. But buying a premises that's far too big for you or far too small. Not taking going out and getting your dad's friends, next door neighbours builder to put it together because he said he could do it at half the price. All these sorts of things are the pitfalls. So the way we set it up and the way you say, look, lenders like it like this, and the reason they like it like that because it works. If it's put together right and it's thought through correctly, they work. And I'm proud to say that all the ones we've done in Samera in the last 6 years are all successful.
All been fine. I think just to add to that, I think the thing that people need to be conscious of when they're doing the startup is when we're saying, like, you only need the one room. You may possibly could argue 2, because obviously, if you've got someone else there working with you. But what you don't want to do is speak to, you can speak to some of the equipment companies, and obviously they'll say, oh, why don't you fit out all 4 rooms day one? It'll be cheaper for you, and in the long run. The problem is, if you're not using all those rooms from day one, you spent, a couple of extra 100,000 on rooms that are sitting there gathering dust. So what we sort of always suggest to people is, do the 1 room, possibly 2. I know now a lot of people are sort of going for the 2 instead of the 1, but 1 is minimum, 2 possibly. Plumb in the other rooms ready to go. If you put a door on it and put surgery 3, surgery 4, no one's going to know those rooms are not fitted out. It'll look like a 4 surgery practice. As long as they're plumbed in, it won't take you long, if you are busier than expected, to put the 3rd room in or the 2nd room in. So don't sort of get carried away with yourself and spend 10 grand on a receptionist desk, because no one's really going to care that much. The receptionist desk looks wonderful, and don't overpay, and don't sort of fit out too many rooms when you don't need to from the start. And then just that other point, really, in terms of location, if you can avoid being on the top floor, that is a key one. The practices we've seen. No, avoid being on the top floor. So like on the 1st floor or 2nd floor. So avoid that if possible, because, it will hinder you sort of going forward, because it will make, you being visible from the street difficult. And obviously it may hinder people sort of getting up to the surgery. So, ground floor is key, because it's so much easier for the practice going forward.
Yeah, those are actually really good points, especially the top floor one. So essentially, the pitfalls are not following our advice. To put it bluntly.
Because I suppose it sounds sort of a bit trite, that, but it's our advice is how the banks want to see it set up.
Yeah.
We used to work for the banks. We know why they want it set up, and we know why they want it set up that way. And to be quite honest, a lot of people come to us with big plans, and they change those plans when they see the costings.
Yeah.
Because what first thing they've got to remember is they've got to supply 30% of that costing. The bank's going to supply 70%. So that 30% is quite hard to find if you're going to spend £600,000.
Yeah.
And you've now got to find 180 grand. And also you've still got to pay back a larger loan.
Yeah.
So what's the point, So just do it sensibly, do it right, and it will work.
And I suppose also, like when we're talking to them, obviously we're coming from a good place, really. We want their practice to be successful. So anything we say to them, we're trying to help them make it in a way that we've seen them work before. So it's not, we don't want to hold them back and not let them have that second and third surgery. We're just trying to tell them, if you structure it in this way, then it's more successful for you going forward. And, hopefully everything will be okay, and it will give them a better chance for the practice to succeed.
I mean, we're trying to get them to borrow less, which is, which you think about it, is crazy.
Yeah.
But,
but I suppose that's the bankers in us, Nigel, where you're trying to make it so it fits and it's successful, not trying to just say, well, this is how much you can borrow, but it doesn't always mean that's the right thing for the client to do.
No, exactly. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to, in summary, then, of all of this, by the sounds of it, it's think about your location, get that right, get all your information together, your financial documents, your business plan, your financial forecasts, and use a specialist. And not just a specialist, but make sure they're not just specialists in their discipline, but in the dental industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, if any clients want to sort of have a chat with us in a little bit more detail about, their individual practice that they're either trying to buy or set up, myself and Nigel are both available for calls. We'll take evening calls, and it's free of charge to have a chat with us, and we'll go through all this stuff tailored to them, and obviously cover any sort of points that they want to answer, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, with the Samera Alliance, if there isn't anything we don't do, we know someone who does. Yeah. So we can essentially help you through every step of the way of starting or buying your dental practice.
Yes.
Brilliant. Right, guys, that was really interesting. I really enjoyed that one. And I will thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you again next time.
Okay. Bye. Thanks, Chris.
See you, mate. Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening in to the Dental Business Guide podcast. We welcome your feedback, and if you're enjoying it, please let your friends know too. Until the next time on the Dental Business Guide podcast.